Right here with two limps, I think I'd definitely just check behind with the king jack and try to see a flop. If you make it, say, 600 and someone goes all in, you have to fold. And again, like say you make it 600, that means these players are only going to have 2,000 or so chips left. And then if you bet around, 1,000 on the flop, you're going to be getting pretty good odds to call. So again, this is one of those spots that goes back to, just making sure you have a good stack size. We flop the top, we flop trips, which is always good. And now this player leads into us. When they lead into us right here, notice that our opponent's almost certainly drawing 100% dead. So you definitely want to just call here and try to let them rope themselves into the hand. Plus, this player behind us may raise as well. Against more tricky opponents, you may consider raising here. Like if this was, say, a $300 game, you can consider raising here because it looks a little bluffy. This is, again, assuming it's only heads up. Once there's 3 players in the hand, raising looks pretty strong. So I think right now your hand looks pretty weak by just calling. The turn gives us quads, and now that we have quads, we are in an interesting spot because our opponent almost certainly has either an ace or a full house. And if we raise here, well, first off, there's this theorem out there in poker that people can't ever fold a full house, which is pretty much true. So even if he has just a random 5, like 5-2, he's probably not going to fold to whatever we do. However, if he has an ace, you really want to let him bet again, or at least let him think his hand is good. So because of that, I kind of like calling here. And notice if we call here, the pot's going to be 1,000 chips. And then whatever he bets on the river, we can just shove over the top. And even if he does check the river, we can just shove anyways, and he'll probably call us with a 5. So I really like to call here, just in case he is bluffing with a hand like, king, queen, or something. You do decide to raise, and again, raising here isn't really that bad, but I'm not a big fan of it. And he did raise to a decent amount to where he's still getting great odds here. And also notice that if he puts in 400 more chips, he's going down to 1,500 chips, and the pot's going to be about that, so you can make an easy shove on the river. Our opponent does call, which is great. And the river's a king. Right here, our opponent checks. And right here, I think our opponent almost certainly has either something like a 5 or ace X, or maybe a pair like 6s, 7s, or 8s. And I don't really think he'll fold, so I think going all in is definitely the only play. And you do go all in, which is great. And he calls us with a bad 5. So that's a hand where they basically just print some money for you. Right here with 3s, we're up to 100, 200 now. When an opponent goes all in for 4 big blinds, I think you have to fold in this position. If we were on the or maybe on the button or the cutoff, you can consider getting in, but not from such an early position. The risk of someone picking up a hand behind you is just a little bit too big. So now the antes have become involved. Whenever there are antes, what I generally do is try to figure out what the blinds are if there are no antes. Or yeah, so what I would do is I would put 2/3 of the blind in the big blind and 1/3 of the blind in the small blind, or 1/3 of ante in the small blind. So basically right here I would put 100 here and 75 here. So we're playing maybe 200, 350, something like that. So that means 3,500 chips is about 10 big blinds. And that's always important to know because that tells you how light you can push. A lot of other players use M, which is a term that, what's his name, Dan Harrington came up with. It tells you how many rounds you can blind off, but I'm not too concerned with how many rounds I can blind off. I'm more concerned with staying in the tournament. So I just think of it in terms of big blinds. And I always have, and almost certainly always will, just because that's how I learned. Right here they fold to us, and we have 7-6 offsuit. This is a spot where you can occasionally raise to around 700 and then fold to a shove. But, folding is definitely fine here. Folding is fine, and I think raising is also fine. Right here we get a raise under the gun and then a shove. And while we did pick up ace queen, I think this is a pretty easy fold here. And you do fold, so that's very good. And as you can see, you get it in drawing almost dead. Right here with ace-8, notice the blinds went up again, so now I put around 200 blinds here, or 200 chips in the big blind and 100 chips in the small blind. So we're playing around 300, 600. And with that 300, 600, I think you just need to push this ace-8. And you decide to fold. I think this is a bit too tight, and I would definitely be raising here. Or shoving here, not just raising, pushing. And again, make sure you realize that even though you do have, it appears to be like 12 big blinds or something, it's really not quite as big as it looks. Right here with this ace-5, I would definitely go all in if they folded to me. But since someone raised in front of me, I think you just have to fold. You pick up jacks, and we get an under-the-gun shove. And when you see under-the-gun shoves like this, it doesn't necessarily mean that your opponents actually have anything good. So don't get scared out of this hand. Actually, if I had something like sevens here, I'd probably just shove on top. You know, a lot of players, they see that they're under the gun and they know they're going to lose 1,000 chips over the next few hands, so they just push very light under the gun. And it's not really that bad of a strategy, but then again, it's not great. So despite that, I think you definitely have to get in with the jacks, and you do, so that's very good. And he shows up with eights, so my sevens would have been slightly behind, but everything else would have been way ahead. And you almost double up, so that's always nice. Right here, if they folded to you, in the small blind, I'd probably be pushing a pretty wide range. Because anyone that lets themselves blind off to 2,000 chips is probably just going to keep blinding off until they get something. And, you know, when I say something, I mean something like King 8. I don't really mean totally blind off, but, you know, I definitely would have pushed with a pretty wide range there. Right here, there's a shove again, and you're sitting here with King 10. Again, just a very normal fold. And now, as we can see, that guy's just kind of going nuts, and he'll bust himself given time. Right here with 10-9 suited, I would definitely go all in if they folded to me. What I try to do whenever I'm in a game is I always think about what I would go all in with if they fold to me, because that's all that really matters. I know I'm going to fold basically everything if someone shoves in front of me. So I always try to think, what would I do if they folded to me? And notice now the blinds are 500 to 1,000, so they're skyrocketing pretty much. And I think this is a very, very easy push here. Anything else would be awful. So you do push and you win a little pot. Right here with 7-8, I think this is a decent spot to shove, because notice these players both have, in the blinds, they both have a decent chip stack to where they can fold to a push. So, you know, if I try to always look for a few extra spots here and there to shove with weakish type hands. I think this is a pretty decent spot. Plus, when you get called, 7-8 doesn't do too poorly. However, all that being said, you don't need to be shoving here every time. You kind of have to just do a few extra shoves here and there just to make sure you continue to pick up chips. So I don't fault you for folding there, but I do think that's a spot where you need to try to pick up some chips here and there. Right here at Jack 9, I think this is a very good spot to push. And you do push, so again, that's very good. Right here with Jacks, again, you know, whenever you're this shallow stack, it doesn't really matter what your opponents do in front of you. If you have a big hand, you can't really fold. And you get it in with Jacks, which is, again, very good. And you hold against King 7. So that's always nice. They just keep giving you free double ups. Right here with King Queen, notice that everyone at the table has 10 big blinds or less except for you and this LOL guy. However, again, once you make the blinds correct, you're really playing with around a 1,700 chip big blind. And because of that, I think you can just shove here. You make it 3,600, and the problem with 3,600 is I don't really know what you planned on doing if LOL or Keep Snoozing goes all in. Like, if LOL goes all in, you have to fold, I think. But if Keep Snoozing goes all in, you put yourself in a pretty tricky spot. However, they all folded, and that little talk was for nothing. You know, always try to think about what could possibly happen. Make sure you're not results oriented. There are a lot of great players out there. I say they're great players. They're not really. That, you know, if they make a play and everyone folds, they think it's the right play just because it worked this one time. And that is definitely not the case. Right here with ace-9, notice LOL has lost a few chips. And, you know, keeps losing and has gained a few chips, but also notice the blinds went up again. And I think this is a really good spot to go ahead and just shove the ace-9. You do fold, though, and I'm definitely not a fan of the fold. You shove with the kings, which I think is good. However, you know, if you do make the mistake of raising with another hand, like you did with the king-queen earlier, you may want to consider raising here as well. Maybe like to 2.5 big blinds or something like that, just to hope that you can induce some action.